Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a Blender tutorial where we make this flame ball thing. And when you hit play, this is what it looks like. This is playing back in cycles. And the cool thing about this is you could view it from, above and from the side. And I recently had to do a project where there was a lot of flames involved. And this was a nice quick and dirty way to do it. The flames didn't have to be realistic, but this kind of served the purpose. So today I'll tell you how to create this. All right, everyone, let's make a flame cube. We're actually gonna leave the default cube. I know, it's crazy. I should probably tell you that the flames are actually made with volumetrics. So we're just gonna fill this cube with a kind of volumetric pattern. Using noise mainly. So let's do that. I'm gonna actually work in cycles. You can do it in EV2, but I think it looks a little better in cycles. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our cube, go to shading, and I think we're just gonna go to render up here, render view. So the first thing we wanna do is, we don't need this principled BSDF because we're actually using a volumetric shader. So we're going to add under shader principled volume, and when you add that, you actually add it to volume, not surface. You can already see that it looks kind of cool. It's like a smoky cube. So we want to add like a texture in there. So the best way to do that is to go to texture, noise, and then we're gonna, if you have your node wrangler, if you hit Control T, it'll add some stuff for you, texture coordinates. So I recommend adding that because it makes life a little easier. So right now we have this texture, noise texture. It's eventually going to go into density. Let's just see what that looks like right now. I think it changed a little bit, but a lot of times with when you use noise textures, you almost always add a converter and color ramp. Let's just throw that in there. And if you grab the handles, you start to see that becomes like, you know what, let's sorry, it's just trying to remember how this works. Let's just make that darker black. Oh, that's our background where the earth is. So you can clearly see now it's a three-dimensional kind of noise pattern. So the tighter you get these together, the more crisp the edges are going to be. See how it's, you can see it's kind of chunky now, which is kind of neat. And so this is the very kind of beginning building blocks of this flamey kind of thing. So let's keep going. We actually want this to move like flames. There's a couple of different ways to do that, but I usually wind up just adding an empty. So I'm going to move the 3D cursor over here. If you hold shift and right click, it'll put the cursor wherever you're clicking in a 3D space. So we're going to add an empty, just a plain axis one is good enough. And we're going to keyframe it there. Now we're just going to move up to frame 40. We're going to move it up on Z just a little bit. That's probably too much. So we're going to keyframe it there. Now these keyframes, the default is set to be a spline type where it's an ease in, ease out. So what we're going to do is, I think you could just hit V and say vector with those selected. Now if we go and do Control Tab, that will change this window into the graph editor. And since we only moved it on Z, we're just going to look at the Z location. And a way to do that is to click on it to highlight it with the left mouse button. And then if you hit Shift H, it will hide everything but the thing you have selected, which is a nice shortcut. So now the other thing we want to do is we want to keep this moving up forever. So you go, we have that selected, go over to modifiers, go to cycles, and you can see it repeats it. So we want to do repeat with offset, and that will just keep it going in that direction. And I'll add one at the beginning, repeat with offset, so the left side will go down like that. So now as you scrub through, this will just keep moving and moving. So that's going to be our reference null for our, to make this pattern move. We are going to grab our empty. Should probably rename it, so we'll just abbreviate it. So just so we know what that is. So now we select our cube. So it should already be working. So as we, well, let's try object. That might be better actually. So there we go. It's moving. The scale's a little off, but we can, on this noise node, if you hold shift, it's a little easier to adjust. So if you go to the left, it actually gets bigger, which is kind of counterintuitive, but that's how Blender is. So now here's a cool thing I like to do. While we're in shader, in shading, in the shading window, if you put the cursor right here, where you get the arrows, and click, actually right click, we're going to horizontal split, and we're going to put that right there. And then turn this into a timeline. So now we can like grab the timeline slider and see what's happening. So the other thing I want to do is, so it's moving up, which looks pretty cool. The other thing I want to do is, if you turn this noise node into a 4D type, you get this W value now. If you hold, I'm going to hold shift because it's very hyper. So if you grab that, you could see how it, move it really slow. You can see how it changes over time. So we're going to actually, let's animate that. You can add drivers and things like that, but I'm just going to try to keep it simple for this. So we're going to hit I. Let's zero it out actually. All right, so I made that 0. We're going to hit I. So it added a keyframe. It turned it yellow. We're just going to go 40 frames up. Now we're going to just move it ever so slightly. Like that much. And we're going to keyframe that. Now we have to do our thing again where we have to make it a linear type of graph. So we're going to hit Control T again. And if you hit the period on the number pad, all the way on the right side of the keyboard, it will zoom in on whatever you have highlighted. So both of these keyframes are highlighted. We're going to hit V again and hit vector, which will make them nice and linear. And then we have to do the same thing again. Hit modifiers, add modifiers, cycles, repeat with offset, repeat with offset. So now the same thing happened that happened before. So now we get a little extra bit of motion in there. So we're already pretty far along. So the other thing we want to do is, right now it's going all the way to the edge of the cube. And I kind of figured out a way to make it so that it has fall off in the middle. And one way to do that is we're going to add a texture that is a gradient. We're going to set it to spherical. And then we're going to do the same thing again. Let's try hitting Control T, which adds a mapping node. You can add these manually too if you want, if you don't have the node wrangler turned on. And I found that if you hit object, it works a little easier. So drag object into vector, and then we have our gradient, and it's set to spherical. So now let's try disconnecting the noise and put the color in there just to see what that does. See, it adds a nice ball right in the middle. If you had it on generated, it kind of puts it off to the side. It's a little, you can use that, but I find it's just easier to use object. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use this to make our pattern be inside that ball pretty much. And it gets cut off on the other, around the ball. So it's just mainly in the center of the cube. And it's cool because it's a 3D thing. You can look at it from any angle. And it seems relatively fast to render. Maybe I'll do that real quick. For some reason, it's 4096 as default, which seems way too high. So we're just going to turn these down. If you hit 0 on the number pad, it will go to the camera view. Let's just hit render and see what that looks like. So that's pretty cool. It's done rendering. I know it doesn't look anything like Flames yet, but we're getting there. I'm going to save it, just Toot One, for lack of a better name. So we need to take this and kind of add them together, basically. So I found the best, one of the ways that it works is if you add a color, mix color, and we're just going to drop that right there. And I'm going to add a ramp. You always add a ramp pretty much. Color ramp. Can't grab it. All right. So this is going to go into factor. This is how we did it. And then this comes down into, I think I put it in B. And I did difference. And I made this black. So if you dump that into density, that does what you want it to do. And if you orbit around it, you could see, if you hit the space bar, you could see the flames are inside that sphere. And so you know, with this color ramp that's hooked up to this gradient texture, you can kind of move these around and adjust the fall off. You can even experiment with, go to color and gamma. Let's see if that helps us. So gamma going to the left makes the sphere really hard edged, and going to the right seems to soften it. So let's try that. It's 1.3. That seems to be like a good thing to do. And then here's another thing that you could do is add, a lot of things are under converter that we need, map range. So if you stick that right here, this allows you to take that black and white info that's used to generate the density, and it will allow you to kind of override the values. So if you leave 0 and 1 from the min and max, this, you know, like it is, but if you take max and crank it up, it'll start to become really thick. It's like clouds, which looks kind of cool. You can even experiment going negative with this just to kind of see what happens. So I'm going to put it on 0 though. All right, so we actually want this to be flame colored, which would be great. So let's change our emission color to like a nice orange. I'm going to change this to orange too, but right now we're actually going to have the flames be emissive. So this color won't really play that much of a role. So here's what we have so far. We have a noise texture that's being animated. It's like a cool kind of smoky thing. And then we have a gradient texture that basically makes a sphere in the middle, and that's using it as, it's being used as a mat basically to get rid of all the other smoky volumetric stuff. So we're really only seeing inside the sphere. Just trying to see here. If you go with a gray color now, you can kind of see what's happening. You know, how it's transparent. So let's try this. We're gonna add another map range, converter, map range, and we're gonna drag the results into this one, but we're gonna use this one only for the emission strength, so we get kind of separate control. See what, it already got a little brighter, so if you crank it up, so now it's kind of brighter like that. If we didn't do that in there, and we just cranked up this emission, it would just do this. which kind of looks neat too, but that's not really what we're trying to do. So you have to dump this in there, into the strength. So that way it's only brightening up the emission where the actual flames are, or smoke. It's supposed to be flames. So let's see what happens here. So you could kind of tweak these and try different things. But we'll leave it at 0 for that range. Just trying to see, wow, you know what? I think I wasn't so sharp on the one I was doing. All right, let's see what that looks like. I'm just trying to give it a little bit more detail in the flame part. Could be just, I might just have to slide up the detail there. And also the other thing I did was I added a little bit of distortion. Let's go and make this black again. Oh, you know what? I think it is. I think it's because it's really dense. Let's drag that down. Yes. All right. So we're getting some. It was way too dense. That's why we weren't getting the details that we had before. So now when you play it back, it's starting to look like something pretty cool. So you could tweak these values. That's what's fun about this. It's all procedural. So you can grab this color ramp that is hooked up to the noise. It's really only two things. It's noise and the sphere gradient. So you can kind of like tweak these a little bit. Let's move that one all the way over. So it's kind of a neat thing. And like I said before, you can view it from any angle. That's from above, from the side, from below. It's a nice, quick and dirty kind of way to make flames in a, and the other neat thing is you could just copy this. You could scale it up. So you get like a whole bunch of flames wherever you need them. Just gonna undo that real quick. Make it a little more punchy. So when you render it, let's see what that looks like. So I went to slot 2. I like to do, when I do test renders, you increment this to the next slot so you can kind of compare the newest render to what you rendered before, just to see what kind of changes you are making as you go, see how it changes over time, and whether you're moving in the right direction. A lot of times I will, you do a series of renders and then you look back at the first ones and you're like, wow, those were way better. So everything I did just made it look worse. So that happens a lot. But we're just going to render this image. Looks pretty cool. Depending on how you're going to use it, you might want to go and turn on transparent. So that will render it with an alpha channel. So this is what we started with. This is what we are now. Let's go to slot 3. We'll hit render. So that's what that looks like with an alpha channel, which I'm not really going to do for this thing. So I'm going to shut that off. It's under film, under the camera icon, and just turn off transparent. And that will go with whatever background we have set here, color. So I just wanted to show you that. If you go to compositing and you hit use nodes. So right now we don't have too much going on. I'm going to render it so we actually get something to work with. So now what I'd like to do is add a layout reroute. So you have that dot there. So now also add an output viewer, which as soon as you do that, this panel turns on. So I just run these, one to that and one to that. And then if you run the image to that, all of a sudden there it is. So what I want to do is add a little bit of a flare, or glare, I guess it would be. Filter, glare, just drop that right there. See how it turns white. So if you just left click, it hooks it up. Change that to fog glow, And I'm just going to turn down the, it might not be bright enough, the flames. So I just cranked it. I wish it went, I wish there was other numbers. I wish you could just crank this up. There's probably ways to do that. Let's turn it on high quality. Let's turn on low quality. Sometimes the low quality just gives you a bigger glow. So that's kind of our flame ball at the moment. I was trying to think if we want to do anything else to it. I'm going to save my project just in case. So let's go back to shader. So I think it looks pretty cool. You can just tweak the numbers if you want. They added this now to the noise texture, this secondary scale, which, you know, adds a lot more details. So that might be what you're looking for. This is really cranking up the distortion, which looks kind of cool. This is with no distortion, which I think it needs some. So I'm going to put some, maybe 0.4. And this is kind of fun. If you take detail and go all the way to 0, it kind of looks kind of neat. Almost looks like a lava lamp or something. Here, let's do a render of that real quick. Yeah, it doesn't really look like flames, but it's kind of neat looking. And if you want, you can, let's turn that back up. Over here, see if you change this color, this is the principled volume. If you change this color, it doesn't really have much of an effect now because it's really just an emissive type of shading now. But if you change this one, it's kind of neat. You can make blue flames, which is kind of fun. All right, well, I think that is my tutorial for this. Try it out, see what you think. It's a lot of fun to play around with. It's very like it's almost like an X-ray or a CAT scan or something like that. It's just a lot of fun. I always enjoyed messing around with volumetric workflows. So this is a nice, quick and dirty way to make a ball of flames. There you have it. All right, well, thanks for watching.